Hello and welcome to Middle-Aged Geek Girl. I'm Sally. Today, as promised, if it was requested, I was going to do it, and it has been requested that I show you how I make one of my silicone bead lanyards. So I decided to show you on this dinosaur set I am going to make. Well, I've made two of the pieces already. It's going to be a lanyard, keyring and pen set, and I did the keyring while I was sorting out the beads I wanted to use last night, because this is pretty straightforward. This is just beads on a beading bar, so there really isn't much to show you in the way of a tutorial on this. It's really just picking the beads and fitting them to the bar. So that's going to be the keyring in the set. And for this set, I'm also using a plush bead on each piece. And this is going to be the pen in the set. So again, plush bead. So what I'll be making on camera with you today is the lanyard. So let's discuss the bits and pieces that you need in order to make a lanyard. First of all, you need some sort of cord to make the necklace part of the lanyard. Now here I have nylon cord that is 1.5 millimeters thick, and when you double it up for threading your beads on, it will be 3 millimeters, which is perfect for silicone beads because they do have a bit of a stretch to them. So you can thread this through, not a problem. And obviously when it splits up, it will be 2 strands of 1.5. Now I get it like this on a roll of a lot of meters. I think this might have been 50 meters on a roll, so I'll be able to make a lot of product with that. Now I am Australian and we use the metric system. I think most of the world uses the metric system now, to be honest. So I cut my lanyard length at roughly 1 meter or 100 centimeters. Now I say roughly because I always try to cut just over that to allow for knotting at the end, where you lose a little bit of length when you've got to knot them to tie the ends off. Yeah, some days I find that I lose a bit more than like a centimetre or so on the knotting, and some days I don't. So I say roughly a metre. I always cut slightly over, and of course they will hang slightly longer once you put the lanyard portion on, or the clasp portion on. But that is my recommended length. I know there doesn't seem to be a standard, because I did do a bit of research when I was starting to make these. I've seen, and most of it unfortunately is in inches. I've seen 34 inches being suggested, which I think is around 86 centimeters, which would that make it 43 centimeter hang. So yeah, I'll make mine slightly longer. I guess it's just a preference. You can make them different lengths for different purposes. I just like to do a standard meter, as most of the cord that I do buy is in rolls of meters. So it's easier just to cut a meter. So that's your cord. Now obviously you need something to fasten the cord, and I use breakaway clasps. If you don't know what these are really just like safety clasps. They clasp like that, and if someone tags on or tugs on your lanyard, or if you get it caught or something, the idea is that they'll just break away nice and smooth so that you don't get injured. These are a great safety measure for lanyards. And lastly, you need the parts to make it a lanyard. So I use just a standard sort of lobster swivel clasp. I've got the silver findings for this piece. Sometimes I use gold findings. So yeah, just your standard sort of lobster swivel clasp. And I also put a round key ring part to it as well, just to give it an extra area to fasten things onto, I guess you would say. So that's your standard part to make the lanyard. Other tools we'll discuss before I go to the beads is this thing, and this is the greatest find. I've never found or heard of these before I started making these lanyards, but I think if you are a quilter or a fabric maker, a sewer of some sort, you probably know what this is already. It's called a loop turner, and I think they're initially designed that you can grab fabric and turn it in the right way, like when you're sewing. These are also fantastic for threading the nylon thread onto silicone beads. So this is like the greatest invention that's probably been, well, I'd say it's been around for a very, 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 very long time, but I'm not a sewer, so I never really knew of it until recently, and I love it, and I love using it. So you can pick these up probably from any haberdashery type store. I know that Spotlight here in Australia have them, and there's also your online marketplaces that you can get them from. Now, the other thing I have that I don't see a lot of people do, but I do it, is I have super glue to tie, or to glue, the knots that I have tied up in the breakaway clasp area, and I'll show you what I mean when I get to that part, because I just like to make it extra, extra secure so that it doesn't unknot and come off. And lastly, probably the most important part to make a beaded lanyard are the beads. Now, as I said, this is going to be my dinosaur set. I've shown you the pen and the keyring I made already. So last night, while I was watching some old episodes of like the People's Court, I'm in a court TV mood at the moment. I don't know why. I go through these weird things of what I want to watch. It's court TV at the moment. So I was selecting and choosing the beads I wanted to make, and these are the ones I'm going to make with the dinosaur set. So I've got the dinosaur is the focal bead. Now, with all of my sets, I have a focal bead which ties the theme of the set together. So for this one, it's the dinosaur. So I've got your dinosaur there. I've got, this will be the base bead. I always try to make the base bead slightly bigger than the other beads I'm going to use, or roughly the same size. I think it's roughly the same size, yeah, as the plush bead there. But just because it's the base bead, I sort of want it to be not the smallest bead, basically. And I've got some spacer beads I'm going to use, and a plush bead, because this set is not purely silicone beads. This set is going to have also a plush bead in it for the texture. So obviously, I know silicone beads are made for the purpose of chewing. I wouldn't recommend chewing this set if it's got a plush bead, but you can definitely squish it and play with it and feel that different texture that you need to. So they're the 5 beads. I usually try to make my lanyard with 4 to 5 beads on it, and then, you know, carry that theme over to the key rings and pens if I'm making key rings and pens in that set. I always also start with the lanyard first, so I can build up from that. So once I know the theme I'm doing for that and the color theme or the color scheme, I will then build the other pieces up around it. So they're your tools and your parts. So we'll move on to part 2, which is the actual making. Alrighty, so the first thing I do when I'm making my lanyard is attach this ring to this lobster clasp. Now that's easy, that's just a case of threading it on. I always thread it on the swivel part so that it's, when you put your cord on, which I also attach to the swivel part, you've got it there just to the side. So you've got 2 ways of attaching items. Okay, now that that's done, get your cord. Make sure you line that up nicely so that it's basically folded in half. Now, again, as I said, I attached this to the swivel portion of the lobster clasp. So just feed that through. So you feed it through like so. So it's hanging like that, and then feed your 2 cords, your 2 ends through like that. Pull it a little bit tight so you've got a nice secure connection there. And then if you want to just check that it, see, and this is what I find, even though I had that straight, you can see there, it always, I don't know what I do in that process, but it always makes it uneven. So that's why you always check. You can loosen this up again. That's why I like this sort of connection, because you're not actually tying anything, so you're not going to be having to undo a knot. I just hold that again like so, and then I just keep pulling on it till it evens up, and there you go. See, that's evened up now. Now there technically doesn't need to be a front and a back. You can have it because this is a swivel clasp, it really doesn't matter. I personally prefer to have this side where the extra bit of cord is showing over there like so. That is what I deem my front, and the back is where it's going to be more of a sort of, it looks like a bit of a bum a bit of a bum crack. So that's an easy way to remind you what the back is. Like I say, it doesn't really matter. That's just a personal preference for me. Alrighty, so now you've got your cord attached to this part, the clasps, which makes your lanyard. Now we get to the fun side. We get to use this really exciting loop turner tool. Now, depending on how strong your hand muscles are, you can do this one bead at a time, or you can do this all the beads if you want. Now, as I said, it really does depend on how strong you are, because it does require a little bit of strength to pull the cord through the beads, especially as it's going to be 3 millimeters, and I think these holes are generally maybe 2 mil, so it will fit through. You just got to have a little bit of a power. And also, because I'm using a plush bead in this one, I don't put the plush bead on this, because these plush beads do have, now I think you can sort of see it, hopefully, maybe if I hold it to the camera right, you might be able to see just in the center of the plush bead there, like a little bit of the fur comes through, and I find that that gets caught on the hook part of the tool, so I have to actually manually feed these through. So for this purposes of this one, I will obviously do it the way I would make them. I would go for this, I'm having this on the base, then the little spacer bead, then the plush bead, then the spacer bead, and then the dinosaur. So that's how it's going to be on the lanyard. So when you put the lanyard up there, it's going to look like so. If you're going to do more than one bead at a time, you've got to remember to do it in reverse order. That's why I always like to put the beads out as I'm going to put them on the cord, so that you don't mess up the order of which you put them on. I mean, it's easy to slide them back off if you do, so it's not like the end of the world. But because I've got the plush bead in the middle, I'm not going to load this entire thing on the needle. I'm going to have to do it those two beads, the plush bead, and then those 2 beads. So let's put the 2 beads on in order that they will go on the lanyard. So because I want that as your base and that as your spacer, that's the way you put it on this tool. Now I recommend taking it from as close to the top as you can, because that way you're not threading through a lot of cord and, you know, hurting yourself in the process. So what you do is you get your 2 lengths of cord together and put it in the hook, close the hook, and I always guide it down as much as I can with my fingers. And this is fairly easy, as you can see. This one didn't take a lot of strength, to be honest, just gentle pulling got that on the thread. Some days I've had, I do have one design where I use 2 millimeter cord, so the 2 sides make 4, and that I really have to, and that's when you have this awesome thing to hook your finger in and really give it a yank. So it's a good way to get some stress out as well. But they went on really easy. This cord is obviously nice and smooth, and as you can see, just threading it through, not any pressure at all. How easy is that? And that is the 2 cords on. So simple. As mentioned, because these have the extra fur on them, I am going to have to manually feed through these cords in this plush one. But again, because the cord is so thin and the hole on these plush beads is nice and big, just feed through that an issue. I do also have like needle bead threaders, so if I really needed to use one of them, I could, but when it really is like you're dealing with a hole that's bigger than the sum of your cord, it makes it so much easier. So that's that on there, like so. And let's put the last 2 beads on, remembering you do it in, well, you load your turner in as the opposite to what you want it on here. So I want that on the top, so that goes on first. And then the other spacer bead. Again, put your 2 cords in the hook and close it off and pull it through. Oh, I can't believe how easy and gentle this one was to pull through. And just pull it down. And there you have the lanyard portion loaded. The other thing some people do, I don't, because I like these to be a fidget lanyard, but some people will then like do a knot here. I won't do this tight so I can undo it, because as I said, my preference is to not have a knot there, but some people will do a tight knot right to the base there so that these beads don't move at all. I don't, because the idea of mine is that it's also a fidget lanyard, so if you want to move these beads around like so, slide them up and down all day, that is the aim. That's the purpose of what I'm making these for. So I will leave this one without a knot. The next step would be to put your clasps on. So take your lanyard cord, you put your threading the whole side towards the cord, because you obviously need to have the clasp part on the outside. Thread it on, tie a knot. Now tie this as close to the end of the cord as you can and pull it tight. Now I just check, so this cord, as you can see, that just came out. So obviously these holes are going to be slightly bigger than the knot I just made. So I'll force that back through, and that's why I always test it beforehand. I think some of these breakaway clasps might have slightly different hole thicknesses, which I honestly didn't check when I bought them, but that's it. Look, it's not going to be a drama, because what you just got to do is make sure, if you can double knot it on the same place, which I completely didn't do there. There we go. Now, honestly, it doesn't matter if you make this part slightly ugly. It really doesn't, because it's going to be hidden in the clasp. And as I said, I use the super glue to double tighten that knot, so there's no chance it's going to come out. And again, see, that's not going to come through now. So I'll fix that up in a minute, but let's put the other end on. And there we go, test that. And you can actually see I'm straining when I do that, so that's not going to come through at all. Beautiful. That's what we want. So as I said, not everyone does this. I don't think I've seen anyone do this actually. I do it because I just want to make sure that these are extra secure. I put a little dab of super glue on the ends. Just a drop. Again, most people don't do this. You don't have to do this. You saw how hard I was pulling on them. They definitely are not going to go anywhere, but it's me for my own sort of product standard. I like to do it, and also make sure you take them off the paper before they become a permanent fixture on the paper. The joys of super glue, hey? Probably another reason people don't like to use super glue is it gets everywhere. And once that's done, I would just cut this about there, just enough so that the end of the cord here is hidden, but they are going to be rock solid now, which is perfect. A lot of people burn the ends of the cord as well, and I would do that if I was making a key ring where I have a bit of the end hanging out, but when it's going to be hidden in a clasp, I just use super glue. So now the super glue should be dry. You just put that in, pull that in, do it up, and there you have it. Break away. Beautiful. All works perfectly. Now I always do a last minute check to make sure everything's lined up. And as you can see, that's slightly on an angle. So if I really wanted to fix it all again, I can just, and this is the other beauty of not putting knots in everything. You can just do that again and just make that so it's a bit more centered. So there it is. That's how I make a lanyard. So just showing you the whole pieces again. That's the lanyard. This will be the set when I eventually photograph it and put it online. That's your pen, and that is the key ring on a key ring bar. That's it. I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope it's an easy to follow instruction. If you're interested in me doing a bit more making on camera, happy to do that as well. Let me know in the comments. I love to hear from you and I always respond. If you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button. Also like the video and hit that notification bell so you're up to date when I have released my latest video. If you are interested in supporting my channel further, I do have a Ko-fi and a Patreon account, and the details are up here on screen. I also have these sort of items, not this particular set as I've just made it, but I also do have these type of sets available on my Etsy store, and that is in the description. The link to that is in the description portion of this video. And if you are, just for Australian viewers here, on the NDIS, you may be able to purchase some of these. You'd have to check with your plan manager, obviously, but you may be able to purchase some of these through your NDIS plan, as I do have an ABN, so I can send you a tax invoice so you can get a refund. Something good to know. I'm also looking at setting up a Shopify subscription for my Instagram and Facebook, so I can do a little bit of a store on those. I'm not ready to branch out just yet for a full website. I'm still using Etsy, but I'm finding Etsy a little bit problematic at times, so if I can start branching out to other areas as well, I will. But I have bought my domain, so I now own magdesigns.com.au and magdesigns.au, so I'm really excited about that. But I think I have waffled for long enough. That is it for this video. I'd like to thank you all for watching, and until next time, everybody, please stay safe, stay weird, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.